The cold metallic walls of the alien chamber pulsed softly with a faint blue light, casting eerie shadows across Lydia Carter's face. She stood motionless, her heart racing beneath her calm exterior. It had only been weeks since she had been taken from Earth by the Xerithians, an advanced alien race desperately seeking a solution to their species' stagnation. They believed that the key to their evolution lay in human DNA, particularly in the addition of gender to their otherwise neutral existence. Lydia had been chosen for this task, though not by chance. She had quickly realized that the Xerithians intended to clone her, to replicate her humanity in a way that would allow their kind to take on gendered forms. But there was one thing they hadn't anticipated. One of their own Xar had developed an obsession with her, a dangerous, forbidden connection. It was Xar's feelings for Lydia that had given her a lifeline, an opportunity to survive in this alien world. Together, they had devised a plan. Xar had helped her blend in, allowing Lydia to take the place of what the Xerithians believed to be her cloned self. She was now pretending to be the first successful human clone, walking among them, deceiving them. But her every move was a gamble. If they ever realized she wasn't their creation, her life would be forfeit. You are prepared for the next phase of the integration, Subject 147. The voice of one of the Xerithian elders echoed across the chamber, cold and devoid of any warmth or emotion. Lydia met their gaze, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Yes," she said, keeping her eyes sharp and focused. "I am ready." Xar stood nearby, his expression carefully neutral, but Lydia knew better. There was tension in his stance, his eyes occasionally darting to hers with a barely concealed intensity. His feelings for her were dangerous, but Lydia knew how to use them to her advantage. She had to. As the ceremonial doors opened, revealing the towering figures of the Xerithian Council, Lydia took a deep breath. Her deception was just beginning. Lydia walked carefully through the towering corridors of the Xerithian compound, her every step echoing off the smooth metallic walls. The tension in the air was palpable. Although she had successfully fooled the Council in the first phase of the integration, she knew the real test was just beginning. The Xerithians were meticulous, their senses attuned to even the smallest discrepancies. If they found out she wasn't the clone they believed her to be, there would be no mercy. Xar, walking beside her, cast her a sidelong glance. His calm exterior betrayed nothing, but Lydia could feel the pressure of his presence. He had risked everything by helping her, and now they were both deeply entangled in a dangerous game. "Remember," Xar whispered as they approached another guarded door, "everything from this point on must be flawless. They will monitor your behavior constantly. Don't give them a reason to suspect." Lydia nodded. She had been trained to observe and adapt as a scientist, but nothing had prepared her for this level of deception. Her thoughts constantly raced. How to act, how to speak, how to blend in. One misstep, one wrong word, and it would all unravel. The door slid open to reveal a sterile chamber with intricate equipment surrounding a raised platform. Xerithian scientists stood waiting, their expressionless faces turned toward her. They were preparing for the next stage of the experiment, the phase where they would test the limits of herd genetic synchronization with their species. Lydia swallowed hard, stepping onto the platform, feeling the cold surface beneath her feet. "We are ready to begin," one of the scientists intoned, its voice devoid of any emotion. Lydia lay down, staring at the ceiling above her, trying to control her breathing. The soft hum of machines filled the air as a strange, glowing apparatus lowered from the ceiling, hovering just above her body. It emitted a dim purple light, washing over her in waves, as if reading her DNA, searching for the key to unlock their evolutionary stagnation. Beside the platform, Xar watched silently, his eyes never leaving her face. She could feel the tension in him, the desperation hidden beneath his cold exterior. They both knew what was at stake. The machines hummed louder, their light intensifying. Lydia closed her eyes, focusing on the task at hand. She couldn't afford to think of failure. She had to survive this, for herself, and for Xar, who had risked everything to protect her. But as the minutes stretched on, a nagging thought clawed at the back of her mind. How long could they keep this charade going before someone discovered the truth? The cold purple glow washed over Lydia's skin as she lay motionless on the platform, every second dragging like an eternity. She could feel the Xerithian machines scanning her, probing the very essence of her DNA, searching for the answers their race had long sought. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her breath slow, steady. There could be no signs of fear. From the corner of her eye, she saw Xerithian watching her with silent intensity. He was the only reason she was still alive, the only thing standing between her and certain death. Lydia had no illusions. If her deception was exposed, the Xerithians would destroy her in an instant. But for now, they believed she was one of them, a clone engineered to help their species evolve beyond its limitations. The hum of the machines grew louder, the purple light growing brighter as the scanning reached its peak. Lydia's body tingled, her skin crawling with the alien energy that surrounded her. Suddenly, the light dimmed, and a voice echoed through the sterile chamber. Synchronization complete. Begin integration process. Her stomach dropped. The integration process was supposed to connect her to the Xerithian collective consciousness, to bind her mind to theirs. It was the next step in their plan to introduce human traits into their genetic structure, and the most dangerous part of the experiment. If they could sense her thoughts, if they could probe her mind, they would know the truth. Xerithian moved forward, his expression carefully neutral, but Lydia could see the tension in his posture. He approached one of the Xerithian scientists, his voice calm but firm. We should delay the integration until further tests confirm stability. Rushing this process could damage the subject. The scientist turned its featureless face toward Xerithian, its voice mechanical and cold. The Council has ordered the integration to proceed as planned. There will be no delays. Lydia's breath caught in her throat. Xerithian's intervention had failed. The integration would happen now, and there was no way to stop it. As the machine above her began to hum again, Lydia's mind raced. She had to think of something, some way to shield her true thoughts, her true identity, from the collective mind. She couldn't let them see who she really was. If they sensed even a hint of deception, it would be over. Xerithian, she whispered under her breath, her voice barely audible. He glanced at her, his eyes sharp and focused. There was no time for words, but in that brief exchange, Lydia understood. She would have to rely on him, trust that he could find a way to help her through this. If he couldn't, she would be lost. The machine lowered toward her head, a soft light flickering as it prepared to connect her to the Xerithian collective. Lydia closed her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. And then, the world went dark. The darkness wasn't just the absence of light. It was a void, vast and endless, pulling Lydia's consciousness into something deeper than her own mind. For a moment, she felt like she was floating, her body weightless, her thoughts scattered like dust in the wind. Then, suddenly, she was surrounded by whispers. Thousands, no millions, of voices filled the emptiness, all speaking in unison, their words unintelligible but full of purpose. This was the Xerithian collective. Lydia's mind reeled as she felt herself being pulled further into their hive-like consciousness. Every thought, every emotion was connected in a web of shared awareness. For the first time, she understood the magnitude of what the Xerithians were, a singular organism, with individual minds woven together, creating a living, breathing network. The sense of control was overwhelming. She struggled to maintain her own identity, her own thoughts. If she allowed herself to become too immersed, she would be absorbed completely, lost in the sea of alien minds. But she couldn't let that happen. She couldn't let them know the truth. Lydia focused, pushing back against the pull, shielding her mind as best she could. Then, amid the millions of voices, she heard one, familiar but distant. "Xerithian," she whispered, her voice barely reaching the surface of her consciousness. Through the haze, she felt his presence, faint but steady. He was there, guiding her, helping her navigate the chaotic swirl of the collective mind. She felt his focus on her, his need to protect her, even from within the shared consciousness. His connection to her was stronger than she had realized. But as Lydia clung to that thread of stability, something else surfaced in her mind, a foreign presence, one that didn't belong. It was cold, calculating, and its curiosity was directed squarely at her. "What are you?" the presence whispered, its tone devoid of emotion. Lydia's heart raced. One of the elders. They had sensed something, a ripple, a disturbance in the web of thoughts. She could feel the pressure increasing, their mind probing hers, looking for inconsistencies, for the lie she was hiding. "I am one of you," she thought, trying to project the same emptiness she had felt in the others. "I am the first successful clone." There was a pause, an unbearable silence, as the elder's presence seemed to weigh her thoughts, testing the fabric of her deception. Then it withdrew, satisfied for now. Lydia let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. But the danger wasn't over. She was still inside their collective, still vulnerable to their scrutiny. Xerithian's presence flickered beside hers, a soft pulse of reassurance. But there was something else in his thoughts, something deeper than protection. Lydia could feel it now, more clearly than ever. Xerithian's emotions toward her were not just an alliance for survival. It was something more, something intimate. She couldn't focus on that now. There was no room for distractions. As the machine's hum began to fade, Lydia felt herself being pulled back from the collective mind, her consciousness slowly returning to her own body. Her fingers twitched, the cold sensation of the platform beneath her bringing her back to reality. The connection was severed. But Lydia knew it was only temporary. As she opened her eyes, Xerithian was standing over her, his expression unreadable. "Did they?" she began, her voice hoarse. Xerithian shook his head. "They didn't suspect. But we need to move quickly. The integration will be repeated, and each time, it will be harder to hide." Lydia sat up, her body trembling from the ordeal. She had survived the first contact with the collective, but she knew it was only a matter of time before they found out the truth. "They're getting closer," Lydia whispered, her eyes meeting Xerithian's. "We can't keep this up forever." "I know," he replied softly. "But I have a plan." Lydia's breath was shallow as she followed Xerithian through the winding corridors of the Xerithian facility. Her mind still reeled from the connection to the collective, and the lingering sense of the elder's presence haunted her thoughts. She knew they were running out of time. The next integration would expose her, and when that happened, there would be no escape. "Xerithian, what's the plan?" Lydia asked, her voice low as they slipped into a shadowed alcove. She could hear the distant hum of the facility's operations around them, but for now, they were hidden. Xerithian glanced at her, his glowing blue eyes filled with a determination she hadn't seen before. "I've found a way to disable the integration system," he said. "It's tied to the core of their network. If we can disrupt it, the entire collective will lose its ability to interface with you. They won't be able to detect your thoughts." Lydia's heart raced. "But won't that expose us? They'll know something is wrong." Xerithian shook his head. "I can make it look like a system malfunction. It will buy us time, enough to get you off this planet. You'll be free." Lydia felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly tempered by the reality of their situation. "And what about you? If they find out you helped me, they'll kill you." Xerithian looked away for a moment, his expression hardening. "I've made my choice, Lydia. I'd rather die helping you escape than live knowing I let them destroy you." Lydia's chest tightened at his words. She had always known that Xerithian's feelings for her ran deeper than mere alliance, but hearing him say it, knowing the sacrifice he was willing to make, stirred something inside her. But there was no time for hesitation. They had to act. The control room was eerily silent as Lydia and Xerithian slipped inside, the only sound the quiet hum of the central system. A large, glowing console dominated the room, its holographic display showing the intricate web of connections that made up the Xerithian collective. Xerithian moved quickly, his fingers flying over the controls. "Once I initiate the disruption, you'll have a window to get to the transport bay. I've arranged for a ship to be ready. It's small, but it will get you out of here." Lydia nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She watched as Xerithian manipulated the system, his focus absolute. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe they could pull this off. Maybe she could escape. Suddenly, an alarm blared, the console flashing red. They've detected something, Xar muttered, his voice tense. I need more time. Lydia's pulse quickened. How long? Just a few more seconds. Before he could finish, the door to the control room slid open, and 3 Xerithian guards entered, their eyes glowing with the cold light of the collective. Step away from the console, one of them commanded, their voices in perfect unison. Lydia's breath caught in her throat. They had been found. Xar stepped in front of her, shielding her from the guards. Go, he whispered. Run. Lydia hesitated for a split second, but she knew there was no choice. She turned and bolted for the door, her feet pounding against the cold floor as she sprinted through the corridors toward the transport bay. Behind her, she heard the sound of struggle, of Xar fighting to buy her time. She wanted to turn back, to help him, but she couldn't. Not now. The transport bay was empty when Lydia arrived, the small ship Xar had promised waiting for her. Her hands trembled as she activated the controls, the ship powering up with a soft hum. As she prepared for launch, Lydia glanced back toward the facility. Xar had given everything to get her this far. She could only hope that he was still alive. With a deep breath, Lydia activated the ship's thrusters, the ground falling away as the transport lifted off. The stars stretched out before her, vast and endless. She was free. But as she stared out into the void of space, her heart ached with the weight of what she had left behind. The Xerithians would continue their search for a solution to their evolution, but Lydia had escaped their grasp, for now. And somewhere in the depths of that alien world, Xar had made the ultimate sacrifice. She was free. But the cost of that freedom would haunt her forever.